Well, welcome, Will Turpin, original member, bassist, harmony singer of Collective Soul, one of only 5 bands to play both Woodstock 94 and 99. Was just
Oh,
reading
nice.
up on that today. And thank you for speaking with WOUB. We are the PBS and NPR affiliate at Ohio University, and we're especially excited because I know college radio was really critical to the launch of Collective Soul. And here we are with the 30th anniversary of Shine, the single that took off, partly, I think, due to the kindling of college radio. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, very true. It was WRAS, Album 88 in Atlanta, Georgia. That was Georgia State University. Um, actually met a dear friend there when Dean delivered the single to the radio station. Dean was going to school there, and a guy named Sandy Fine answered the door, and he just always had a great ear for music. He became our tour manager and a great friend of ours. But he immediately started playing the song and thought that's the one he picked out. He actually got the whole record, the CD, as it
Wow.
would have been, and he picked out Shine, and and we were on an independent label, and next thing you know, a commercial station picked it up in Florida, and rest is kind of history.
Yeah. Well, and I really love that because it speaks to well, a couple of factors. One, that was a couple years before the Telecommunications Act that changed everything in radio. And you guys probably noticed some of those effects. But it also speaks to regionality. Another reason we love that story, as an affiliate of NPR in the Heartland, you guys sprung out of Georgia. You a lot of bands think they have to go to LA, they have to go to New York, they have to go to Nashville. But you
Right.
guys, to my understanding, stayed into the Georgia area, and that's where you took off from.
Absolutely. And you know what? We kind of, it's Georgia's got a rich history. So a little bit, people were paying attention a little bit to Georgia. Kind of started with, kind of started in the older days. Otis Redding, Ray Charles, James Brown, um, and then the Macon scene and Capricorn Records, Allman Brothers, Atlanta Rhythm Section, and I'd say the band that really started to allow bands such as Collective Soul, John Mayer, um, the Black Crows, all these bands came out of Atlanta. I think REM was kind of the instigator for that. Out of Athens, but an hour east of Atlanta. And REM, just didn't sound like a Southern band. I think that's what really helped a band like Collective Soul. While we were influenced with a Southern rock sound, and you can hear some of our double solos and things like that, I don't think anybody hears Collective Soul and goes, "That's a Southern rock band." And same thing with REM. They didn't sound like a Southern rock band, and yes, I think a little bit of that music history had a lot to do with it. So there were people that were paying attention, but no, we never thought we had to go to New York or LA. No.
Yeah. Well, and it's astonishing, the pace of which you guys took off all of a sudden after you guys were delivered to college radio, and then that commercial station picked it up. Because I was reading about how the label didn't even allow you guys to record, the album in the studio that you'd wanted to do. They
Yeah.
just put out the demo because they said there's not enough time. You gotta seize the momentum, I
Mm.
guess. And then before you guys know it, you're at Woodstock 94. You open for Aerosmith,
We
who
did. Yeah.
are on their farewell tour. So do you recall kind of the timeline there as far as like how much time had passed between when that single would have been picked up by college radio and then when you guys were doing Woodstock 94 opening for Aerosmith?
Yeah, I mean, almost barely less than a year later.
Wow.
I think WRAS would have been playing it. There was a Toys for Tots drive, and we always played the Toys for Tots show. And I remember we played that show, and some people knew Shine from the college radio station, so that would have been Christmas. And then 9 months later, in September, we're playing Woodstock '94, and about to do all the sheds across America with Aerosmith.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I was laughing with Woodstock 94 because I saw the crowd doing the Yaz
Yeah,
and Shine, and it's just this massive sea of
yeah,
people.
yeah. I tell everybody it's a sea of humanity. And everybody said that was the loudest the crowd was in '94, partly because the numbers did diminish just a little bit when the rain came in and the mud came in. But that Friday night that we performed, gorgeous evening, no rain yet. A lot of bands that were new played that night. And we're still friends with some of those guys.
Mm.
Candlebox played that night. Cheryl Crow played that night. We're still friends with those guys and her band. Live played that night. Those became great friends of ours that we toured with over the years. Who else played on Friday night? It was just a really good rundown. Blues Traveler, another band that we toured with extensively and really admire and are great friends of. So that Friday night of Woodstock '94 was super special.
Yeah, well, and I was wondering about, because you guys, like I said, one of only 5 acts. You mentioned a couple others live, and Cheryl Crow being among the other 5 that played at both '94 and '99
Okay.
Woodstock.
Yeah,
Metallica,
I didn't know about the official 5 that had played too, but I'm liking this.
yeah, Metallica and Red Hot Chili Peppers. It was
Okay. All right.
5.
All right.
Red Hot Chili Peppers did not have the best experience with Woodstock '99, and there's this new documentary about Woodstock '99 and all the problems there.
Mm.
How did you guys fare at Woodstock '99? Because it's got kind of a bad rap, but maybe it was all right for some of the bands. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the bands, bands get on stage. We get on stage and do our thing, and we're backstage. We've got buses, and there's helicopters taking us places if your bus is off site or whatever. But um, it was tangible. The difference between '94 and '99 was absolutely tangible. The moment we got on site in Woodstock '99, it was tangible that it had been commercialized and it wasn't as cool. They had people on top of if you've seen the documentary, you know what I'm about to say, but they had people on top of an old tarmac. They had people on top of cement. You couldn't even bring in your own waters. They're charging them $4 in a day when $4 for a bottle of water was stupid. And even today, I think that's too much. But
Yeah,
so it was super tangible that there was a undertone of people being pissed off. I'll go ahead and say it like
yeah,
that. But we had on stage, it was fine for us because it hadn't really gotten bad yet. I think we played on a Friday, and by Saturday, late afternoon, things were getting really bad.
yeah.
Um, we I remember playing with our buddies from Atlanta. Seven Dust had
Mm,
played right before us, so we got to hang out with them. So we had fun, So we were with our
yeah,
buddy, and we played our show, and the set was great. The crowd was great for us. The anger had not boiled over yet, but it
yeah.
was tangible. The difference between '94 and '99 was absolutely tangible the moment we got there.
Well, and I saw with '99, you guys even did the Crazy Train cover. So even, and it still seemed pretty ebullient then. So I was like, all right, well, maybe they got, the brighter end of the festival.
Yeah, we weren't there when they were burning stuff down. We were already in Syracuse playing a show that Saturday night, I believe. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, we weren't running for our lives or anything.
Yeah. Well, going back to the regionality of Georgia, are you speaking with us from Reel to Reel Studio?
Yes, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I was going to talk about that because that is the longest continually running studio in metropolitan Atlanta, I believe.
yeah, that's right.
Going strong since '76, and that year always makes me think of Boston and Tom Schultz, being very diligent in his studio. So that was an interesting year for music and being in the studio. But Reel to Reel, I know, was real integral to Collective Soul's history as well. Your dad on the studio, and Ed, the singer for Collective Soul. My understanding, he was an engineer
Yeah,
there. So this is the studio effectively that Collective Soul sprang from.
it is. There's this the original studio was built in the basement of a home that was actually my grandfather's. But the original studio was it was in a small town, Stockbridge, Georgia. The original Collective Soul, we all went to the same high school. Ed and Dean's father was the minister at the church. My dad's studio, where I lived, where Ed and Dean lived, where Ross lived. you're not talking about a third of a mile radius. It was a
Wow.
very small, serendipitous little situation. Um, and yeah, man, the documentary comes out next year. It'll be, a lot more of those stories, but the detail of those stories is still, it's pretty awesome, how special the circumstances were. But
Do you
yeah, man,
remember
Collective Soul came out of the studio, man. We were a studio band.
do you remember what year Ed began working there?
Ed would have went to Berkeley for about, I think he was there 1 year, maybe less.
Hmm.
He came back home, started working on his craft, and went to my father and said he wanted to be an engineer. My dad said, "Well, I'll teach you how to be an engineer." And Ed certainly learned it all and was there all the time. Ed says that Ed describes it this way. He said, "My father gave us all the fertile ground and the water and the sun and everything we needed to be ourselves in the studio and learn about how to be musicians." And he taught us a lot about the main thing that you do as musicians is create songs. You're not trying to be the cool guy on the street. Um, you're not trying to get as many girlfriends as you can or whatever. It's about creating songs, And although there was a time when there was only girlfriends in the audience, uh, girlfriends and moms basically, but he taught us a lot about the song and how to you service the song and you raise the song up. You're not raising up your own ego. You're not raising up showing somebody what you can do. You're trying to service the song and make a song something special. So we
Hmm.
we all had that acumen, and I think you hear it in our records. When I listen back, you hear a young band, but you don't hear a very unexperienced band. It sounds
Yeah.
very sounds clean and polished, and we were focused on servicing the song.
Hmm. Well, there's something to be said about how that first album, was the demo essentially, and the record company thought it was sophisticated enough to launch it, and it sort of shaped, the direction that rock radio was going to go in, as it was going through that post
Yeah,
grunge era, I suppose. So it's that was fateful.
it's interesting because we always thought, okay, yeah, if we get signed, we'll be able to re-record and revisualize some of the songs and record some new songs as a band, right? And
Yeah.
Atlantic had better ideas, because I think if we would have re-recorded it, nothing would have been the same.
Hmm.
I can guarantee that nothing would have been the same.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
beautiful as it was.
and so, on that regionality angle, I noticed with this tour, so we're speaking with you because you'll be coming to Ashland, Kentucky at the Paramount Arts Center on Friday, October 20th. The night before that, you'll be in Paducah, Kentucky. And I was struck by that because I know in the summer you guys played in Marion, Southern Illinois, and they're not even an hour apart. And I've spent one of my good friends is in that area, so I've spent a lot of time there, and I've come to find, this part of the country is flyover country. Going from Cleveland to Dallas, I'm always flying over it, and not a whole lot of people know anything about Southern Illinois and how far it is from Chicago and whatnot. And there's this really interesting music scene there that's pretty cool, a rock scene in particular. There's country as well.
Mhm.
But like, you just don't really hear about it in the mainstream. And so for you guys to be playing, two shows on this tour in that area, is there something that you've noticed, like that part of the country? Like, a lot of big rock bands don't get to have multiple shows in an area like that. And I presume they wouldn't get booked unless you guys really had a good draw.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a marketing and promotions game plan that agents and managers came up with. We wanted to play a lot of secondary markets this summer. Next summer is going to be a lot of major markets with a multi-band bill. And so if you get out, you get to play some of these secondary markets. You get to play in front of some people who might not have thought, well, I'm going to travel 2 hours away to the major city show. But this band's coming in town to the Paramount Theater, and I live 10 minutes away or 20 minutes away. So you kind of cultivate a little bit of stuff outside of the major markets, and that's kind of the idea of this summer.
Yeah.
Lot of festivals and a lot of secondary markets.
Well, in Paducah, actually, where you guys play on Thursday, Alice Cooper's playing it tonight, Friday the 13th.
Right on.
Yeah.
He's a friend of ours. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, I interviewed him last year, and he's just amazing at
He's
how
great.
pioneering he is, and yet humble and responsible.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
the that balance is well done. So I wanted to ask you about a show that struck me that you guys did recently, because it was very much on a whim, it seemed. You guys were playing Vegas, and a 13-year-old fan had a sign saying, Ed, I can shred December. And you guys brought him up, and he played, and it rocked, and he just rolled with it. Is that something that you guys do semi-frequently? Like take a chance on an audience member who says they can keep up?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, we've done that a number of times. We definitely trust people, and if they can't keep up, it's not going to slow us down. So, but but for the most part, when somebody says they can do it, it's going to be probably really fun and really magical for everybody to see somebody just come up on stage, play with play with some professionals that they've been listening to their whole lives.
Hmm.
It's special even for us and fun. We'll if you saw a video of that, we would have been smiling the whole time.
Oh,
It'd
you
have been fun.
were. I mean, it was great. And
Yeah.
I was almost like, was he a plant? And I know he wasn't, but it just, went off without a hitch. And I don't know, is that like when you're looking to book up and coming, musicians at reel to reel, has that ever manifested from an encounter like that at one of your shows?
I have met some people who have come down here to work at Collective Soul shows, but not particularly like when they got on stage with us. No,
Yeah.
not that situation.
Okay.
It,
Well,
it
maybe one day.
it's a possibility.
Okay, so I did want to ask about the new record, of course, Vibrating, that came out last year. My understanding is it was recorded at the same time as Blood,
Right.
which came out.
Most in that same era, it would have been kind of a little bit of a right before COVID and during COVID. We were finishing up stuff during COVID, and uh we stayed busy during that whole thing. We kept recording and making music. That's kind of always been our deal anyway. We're always looking at the next thing, even 30 years later. So
Hmm.
so yeah, Vibrating, and Blood. Yeah, we're super proud of those records that we're making. It's still that same thing that happened to us. Every record we've made at our whole career still happens. I can feel the magic when we know it's right. I can feel the magic in the moment. And so yeah, it's a lot of our contemporaries don't crave the studio anymore like we do, and we still
Hmm.
crave the studio as if it was 1997. We're constantly looking at the next thing, and I'm producing now with the
I was just
production
about to
company,
say, I
and
mean,
I'm
the
still
fact
working
that
with
you're,
artists and creating new stuff all the time. It's just something it's in our DNA.
yeah. Well, so you had experience with both. What struck me is that, that first record, like I said, was indie initially, and then, a major record label picked it up, and then you guys pretty much dominated, radio. I know you were just recently recognized by BMI for all those huge rock singles. And then you went indie again. And I know you've worked with distributors. I think with Vibrating, you did it on your own label, but
Yeah, and it's
distributor.
all just partnerships in this world. But yeah, it's not like we have a label and people answer and working as a label. It's all outsourced. Fred Crochelle at Crochelle Entertainment Group is able to quarterback anything and all things Collective Soul. And there's since the record industry has evolved, there is a lot of those secondary outlets for people to release stuff, and it doesn't matter if you're independent on a level that Collective Soul is independent, which is not necessarily a small level, or if you're just literally independent and starting out new. A lot of these same people are doing the same things for everybody that's out there right now.
Hmm. So with on that note, the industry has changed so much. So, and you were an indie artist, in the mid 90s, and then also now. And so much has changed as far as distribution. And of course, we talked about the radio regulation. Um, what's your I guess barometer right now? Like, do you feel pretty good about it now, how it compared to then? or what?
Yeah. Comparisons to me are sometimes futile because
Mhm.
everything's always evolving. So comparison's fun to talk about, but I don't compare things thinking I wish it was still that way and why did it change?
Mm.
You have to accept change and figure out, where is that stream that I got to flow in? And it took a second. There was definitely a hiccup there, right? When Napster was happening and we can't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars creating art and then give it away for free. It just
Right.
that model doesn't work. But now the streaming platforms are paying royalties, and everything's kind of evolved to where I think I'm in a good spot as far as where the record industry is today, as far as how it's operating and um, how a band like Collective Soul can thrive, and same thing with a band that's brand new, a record band from California just released Odd Army. I recorded and produced that.
Mm.
Um, Check it out. It's a full record, and so it doesn't matter if you're new or been around for a while. The outlets and the availability to get your music heard is it's there. It's all there, and I'm happy with it. That being said, I mean, I think some of the streaming royalties need to come up a little bit, but it's all documented and it's all really transparent right now. So
Yeah.
uh, it just is what it is. That being said, we did see the craziest evolution in the record industry that we've ever seen, because they were still making cassettes of our third record.
Yeah.
Now it's all vinyl's back, and I understand why vinyl's back, but you're not going to see cassettes again. You know what I mean? It's like they were making cassettes of Collective Soul records, and it doesn't seem like that long ago to me, but it was a long time ago as far as the record industry is concerned.
Yeah. Well, and I know Gen Z, have kind of taken a liking to cassettes. There weren't that many, manufacturers of the players anymore, and then now they're kind of bringing it back in so many things from the '90s. And have you guys noticed an uptick in young people coming to your shows the last couple of years?
Yeah, the kids still want to see, hey man, I know these rock songs. I know some of these rock. They still want to see that band from they'll categorize us as from the '90s, and I guess we are from the '90s, but uh, they still want to see that band. If you're a music fan and you're a music lover, people want to come check it out because like I figured out about 15 years ago, they're not going to stop playing a large number of our songs. I think I'll be gone, and you'll still be able to hear Collective Soul songs.
Yeah. I mean, as I was talking to my parents about that, as soon as I hear that beginning of December, I'm like, man, that puts me back in the backseat of the '96 Dodge Intrepid on our way to the rec center or wherever. And I guess, my last question would be World I Know. I was, listening to the hits and the deep cuts. And I noticed in that song in particular, I think your bass line in the verses was very interesting. Do you have any thoughts about that bass line? Because
Yeah,
uh,
I
just the
mean,
way it's
I,
formulated was not exactly what I had expected, but I think that's what made people kind of perk their ears up at that song, and it became a huge hit.
um, I was a refugee on bass. That's the way I describe it. Anyway, I told my best
Mm.
friend that we're in a band, and I was a fan of Ed's songwriting. I told him I'd play bass. The bass player wasn't really working out and wasn't necessarily in our tight circle, because up to that point I'd been playing percussion and singing all the background harmonies with Ed, and I hadn't committed full time because I was a music major, and my mom had told me my whole life not to try to be in a rock band. It'll never work. But I committed to bass, and I struggled technically a little bit on that record, but I always create from what comes into me, and I don't necessarily just play bass like what's the root and let me find the kick drum pattern. I try to incorporate a melody, and sure enough, that little line and some of the nuance that I did on that bass line, Matt Serletic immediately, he was producing that record. He immediately said, "I like that bass line," and you're doing in the verse, and it kind of became the spearhead for what the strings were doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
On
I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
And of course it's played all the time
yeah.
to this day.
I listen to it and I feel like, okay, I wasn't really a great bass player, but I was creating the way I still create today. I hear melodies and I hear things come in, and I'm not just trying to lay down a root or something like a root and hit the kick pattern. I grew up listening to Sting and Paul McCartney and John Paul Jones. Those would have been my heroes as far as bass goes. Those were the type bass lines I liked. You can hear it in John Paul Jones playing a melody on Ramble On. You know, it's a bass
Yeah.
melody the whole
Yeah.
time around. You don't have to even think about how many melodies are on the bass lines of Paul McCartney and Beatles tunes.
Right.
And
That's
that's the way I feel. And my fourth biggest or as far as big influences on the how I approach creating bass parts for a band is Adam Clayton, also on
mm,
bass. Always attracted to his style and what he did with the bass in a band.
awesome. Well, thank you, Will Turpin, very much for speaking with us at WOUB, your PBS and NPR affiliate at Ohio University. We look forward to welcoming Collective Soul to the Paramount Arts Center on Friday, October 20th. And in the meantime, safe travels.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks. Appreciate your time. Come celebrate with us.